Hey, everybody, welcome back to wow, this is a great intro. I already lost my train of thought. Welcome back to the podcast where I lose my train of thought. Today is the something episode of some podcast that we're on. I am AJ here with Harrison. This is a great intro.
This is a great intro. I believe Taps and Patience and episode 14 to kind of fill in the gaps.
So I was going to say something about being sick for the last 2 weeks, and I'm also going to use that as my excuse for that intro.
Hey, it's all right. We all fumble the ball every once in a while.
Oh gosh.
I know I've had my fair share of dropping the ball. So, but anyways, how have things been going?
Not great. I've been sick for like 2 weeks, and for the first couple days, the first week or so, like I was pretty bad. I was out of it for a while, and lately I've just been coughing really bad.
Oh man, that sucks.
It's been driving me crazy. It's been like 2 weeks. I don't know when it's gonna finally go away. I should probably actually go see a doctor at this point because it's been so long.
Yeah, that's probably wise. Well, fair enough. It's been 2 weeks since we last talked. So one question I have for you is, have you had any packaging that's come in? Because it should be coming in pretty soon if it hasn't.
Oh, yeah, man. I forgot how long it's been. Yes, the packaging for the Kickstarter is in.
Oh, sweet.
I've even shipped a couple packages in it.
Man, I haven't seen that yet.
I am super happy with how it turned out. Scott did a great job on it. The package is just a little bit bigger than my previous design, but it can fit way more carabiners just from like the least common denominator problem. Like before I could only fit one on each layer of packaging, and now I can fit up to 3. So I should be able to fit all of my orders in these boxes here, which will save me a lot of money on shipping, and I don't have to have multiple size boxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's awesome. I think they look really good. I think we've talked a little bit about my packaging experience. Well, I really appreciated it and it looked really good. One, we are not designers, so they aren't the best looking thing, but they're decent. And 2, they have issues on them. And I think that's just because it's a prototype run.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, mine was designed by a graphic designer.
Yeah. Which I'm totally going to have to steal at some day if we ever redesign our boxes or anything else like that.
Yep, Scott is there looking for work. I'm sure he'll take something.
So, well, let's see here. Our Etsy store, we'll talk about that a little bit. It's been doing really well. I mean, obviously it's the holiday season, so it would be bad if it wasn't doing well. But I mean, over the weekend we got like 14 orders, which for us is a lot. So
yeah,
so it's pretty cool, and it's funny because it's.
What are your big sellers on Etsy? That's what I was going to ask.
I was going to say my biggest seller right now is our challenge coins / poker coins. We've sold over 50 of them in about 2 months.
Okay, it's not bad at all.
So, and they just seem to be picking up in volume more and more as time goes on. And we get a lot of custom orders on that, where people will send us their own designs and things that they want on it. In fact, we just opened up a new listing. So before we had the standard coins, which have just a black mark on both sides for poker stuff. We have our deep engraves, which we have some pirate coins, some kind of Aztec looking coins, some Glock coins, and those are kind of a deep engrave. And then we have our custom coins, which we do a black mark. And with that black mark, we can do anything pretty much as long as it's in the right format. Like we can do photos and stuff. We've had probably 5 or 6 people that have wanted a photo on one side and then something written on the other side. And so that's been pretty fun. Um, and then we just opened up custom deep engraving. So if people want to do the deep engrave, then they can do that with whatever they want on it. So, and then eventually I'd like to get into doing, we've done some 3D engraving on some coins, and I'd like to do some more of that. I'd like to experiment with that because I think if we can get that dialed in on the coins, it'd be good, but it's also good practice so we can start implementing it on some gun stuff as well. So it's a process to get everything dialed in. We've got 3 lenses now, a 300 millimeter, a 175, and a 110. And so what you want to do when you're using that laser is you want to use the smallest lens that can fit whatever you're trying to use on it, because it'll give you the most power in the smallest area. And so we can go all the way from 12 inches to 4 inches, depending on which lens we're using for our area. And for the deep engraves on the coins, using that really small lens goes really fast. So those coins fit into that 4-inch square, and it just is so much faster than going up to like 12 inches and using the 300 millimeter lens.
Yep.
I need to see if we have, I don't think we posted anything to Instagram with it, but I have a video where it looks like the coin's on fire with that laser coming down on it with the 110 lens, because it's just shooting sparks and everything everywhere. It's really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Speaking of Etsy, I actually had Scott, the graphic designer we were just talking about, come into the workshop the other day, and he sat down and took new product photography of a lot of the products I needed to get on Etsy, and made the Etsy listings for me, and did all that stuff. So now I actually have more than one thing on my Etsy store.
That's awesome.
Which will hopefully pay itself off here pretty soon, because I was getting pretty steady sales of that. The orange slice is the one thing I had on there. And so if I can quadruple that or quintuple that with these other things, it would go a long way.
Yep. That's what we're looking at right now. I mean, if I could get anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month of basically passive income through Etsy, I would be phenomenal. It'd go a long ways to helping stuff out.
Yep. I mean, that's a machine payment right there, or mortgage, or.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's one thing I always say, it's the little things aren't going to make or break us, but they grease the wheels. So,
and cash flow is everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's our biggest problem is that we're starting to get into the point where we're taking on some bigger and bigger jobs, and we have to have capital on hand to pay for the material up front so we can take on the bigger jobs, and then we're strapped for cash until we finish the job. And then it's like, oh, well, we finally got paid and we made some good money, but it didn't feel like it for a long time. So, but I think when as the cash starts flowing a little better, it'll feel better as time goes on. So, and then let's see here. Last week you were sick, and the end of my week was just awful. I mean,
yeah. So let's talk about that. What happened?
So the job shop stuff has kind of dried up for right now. I've been making a lot of phone calls, and everyone's just they've got through their busy part, and now everyone's waiting until next year. So, but the Christmas stuff and the gun stuff has picked up, kind of flip-flopping. And so, we had a customer that came in who wanted an RMR cut. Normally, we tell everyone that we want them to supply the site, especially for an RMR cut on a gun slide that we haven't done before. And this was the very first time that we had someone who had a gun that they wanted an RMR cut for, but they didn't have the RMR site when we got the gun. And so we were like, okay. So I went online, and I don't know what it is about companies that make red dots for guns and stuff, but they do not have anywhere online where you can officially get the layout pattern for these things. And there's a whole bunch of different people that have like measured it themselves and come up with their own DXF patterns that you can download. And I tried one of those, and it was close, but it was not close at the same time. And so what I ended up having to do, and why last week sucked, was we drove 30 minutes to a company, a local company that sells gun parts, and had the type of RMR. It's a Trijicon RMR. They had one of those red dots in stock, and so I would cut a test piece, and I'd cut like 4 of them with different, tolerances and whatnot, and I'd go down there and I'd go, okay, that one doesn't fit, that one doesn't fit, that one doesn't fit. Okay, that one's pretty close. I'd go back and make a bunch of tweaks, and like it was working, but I made 4 trips back and forth.
Oh gosh!
And on the final trip there, I called up my cousin and I was like, it's still not quite there yet to the way we want, and we just ended up buying it.
Probably should have started there.
It was almost $700.
Oh gosh!
For that red dot, which is more expensive than the gun that we're mounting it to. And
Can
so
you return the red dot?
No.
Oh.
No. So our hope and and we're still kind of hoping, not to put pressure on the customer, but he hasn't bought one yet.
Oh. Well, here you go.
And so we're going to try and see if he will buy it. And so we won't be out that money. But if that doesn't happen, then what we'll probably end up doing is we have a couple other guns that we're working on, and I'd like to do some more gun shows. Apparently, we missed out on the one that was at on Black Friday, but apparently it was crazy. I was talking to another gun shop, and they said they sold over 100 guns.
Wow.
Or something day. Like that. Gosh. I think it was 100, but I don't quote me on that. But they said it was just nuts. Everything was selling. And so that was the one gun show that I couldn't make and my cousin couldn't make because we were both gone. And I was like, man, I wish we'd been there. But we haven't gone to a gun show and actually sold a gun yet. Granted, we've only gone to 2. And so I'd like to go to some, even though we're offering services, there's a lot more people interested in buying guns. So if we can have some guns that we've done work to, as kind of like a, hey, we did the custom work for this, they're for sale, but it's also an example of what we do. I think that'll do well. So.
Yeah, I would definitely try to go down that route. And you run into the problem we were just talking about. It's basically a cash flow problem where you're sitting there with, I don't know, $10,000 worth of just materials and a couple guns that you have in inventory. But, I could see that being a pretty profitable way of making money. And plus it's just advertising for your other services if you want to focus on those.
Yep.
Or maybe you find out that your market doesn't really support the custom services as much, and you just become, a custom
gun maker.
A custom gun maker, yeah.
Yeah.
Which that has a lot of advantages because then you're a product business, not a service business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of guys that are doing that kind of stuff. So, and it kind of makes sense. I was talking to one guy, and he was saying that he customizes stuff on a basic level, stuff that he knows he can get money out of. Like, if he's looking at a gun and say that gun costs $400 and he can do a service that costs him $30, but he can upcharge, $60 for it, he'll do that. And then something that he could do that would cost $300 where he can only get like $300 out of it or less, he won't do, but he'll tell people that he can do it to them if they sell it. And he does that as the service because then he can sell it at full price.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense. And so I'd like to get some used guns that we can turn around, do some work to, and then sell them and go from there. So,
Yeah,
but
that makes sense. And it's also a way that you could like start to define your style and like what you do as a business. Like you'll have this body of work. You know, if you're customizing your own product line, like you're going to do the things that you're the best at, and people will see that and go, okay, these guys are the guys who do this. So I need this done to a gun. So I'm going to go and have them do it for me since they're clearly the experts.
yeah, yeah. Although I will say we had both a negative and a positive today. Speaking of gun stuff, um, we had a gentleman who came and dropped off a gun to be threaded, a barrel
Mm-hmm.
threading, and we had just run a gun very similar to that last week, and so we had everything already set up for, and we ran it in under an hour
Nice.
and had it all done and ready to go. And the guy picked it up same day, and he was super happy and impressed. So um, it's it's one of those things that kind of builds on. The more we see stuff, the more we're kind of getting used to it, and the faster we can go at it.
Yep.
And so it's nice to see some of that coming through, and like the interactions that we had today. And then on the downside, we had another problem with our laser today again,
Uh-oh.
but we figured it out, so it's not completely uh-oh. So let me walk you through this story. So we're doing a lot of tumbler engraving, and we have the fourth axis for our laser, and it is significantly slower than engraving on something that's not using the fourth axis, because it's got to engrave a line and then it ticks over, engrave a
Mm-hmm.
line, tick over, engrave a line, tick over, and it's just really really slow. It's literally probably 5 times faster, if not more, um, not using the rotary versus using the rotary. And so that's one of the reasons we got the 300 millimeter lens, is because the larger the lens goes, the more of an uneven surface you can go on, and it can still be in focus and still cut. And so um, we had some that order of 42 tumblers that I think we posted on our Instagram. We were able to do 3 out of those 4 operations without doing it on the fourth axis, and we
Mm-hmm.
literally got the first 3 operations done um, in, in less time than it took us to do the one rotary operation,
Oh,
which was
gosh.
significantly smaller than the other
Yeah.
3. Um, so that kind of gives you a little bit of idea of a perspective on that. And so with that, when we did that tumbler, it was the smallest size tumbler, and we had the 300 millimeter lens, and we had it maxed out on our machine, like all the way as high as we could get our lens to go, and it just barely fit under it. And we have some more that we need to do that's larger. And so the tower that houses our laser is bolted to a base plate, and we machined some spacers on our lathe that are about 2 inches tall to go underneath that laser to raise it up some. Um, and we just did that recently. And then, so today, my cousin was running some coins, and we noticed that our dark engrave stopped working. Like, it would start to work, it would work on the bottom, and then it would start to taper off on the right hand side. And then by the time it got to the top, the whole image would be basically non existent or really, really light. And it was kind of taper off at an angle. And so we kind of went down this rabbit hole where we thought that when we machined those spacers that maybe they were off. And so, you know, we're trying to figure out what's going on. We're tearing stuff apart, putting it back together. The head on the laser, it was tilted down because it's on like a gantry system, and it's on
Mm-hmm.
an arm that, so it's got kind of an X pattern where it can raise up and down, and then your base is over here, and so your head is hanging way out. If for those of you who can't see, picture like a sky crane that you see on buildings, like over buildings, something that kind of looks like that. and at the very end of it is the laser head that's over your whatever you're trying to engrave. Well, we stuck a level on it and it was tilted down. But when we removed the spacers and stuck it on the ground, it was tilted down still. And so we figured out that that was probably just the slack in the bearings as it's traveling up and down. And so there's nothing we could really do there. But we went ahead and stuck some spacers and got it level. And that helped, but it didn't fix the issue. And so we were scratching our head, trying to mess with all this different stuff. And it turns out that with the Galvo laser, you have those two mirrors in the head that are rotating to do the image. At some point, some dust or something, it almost looked like a smudge got on one of those mirrors. And we cleaned it off. And now that it's kind of one of those blessing in disguises, we got one of the best coins I've ever seen off of that because we leveled the head perfectly to the work to try to make sure that wasn't the issue. But in doing so, it didn't fix the issue. But when we finally did fix the issue, the black that came off of it was some of the best looking black coins I've seen come off that machine. So it was one of those extreme frustrations, spent a bunch of time, wasted, but it ended up benefiting us, I think, in the long run.
Yep.
So, sorry, that was probably a long, drawn out story, but anyways, it was. I was so glad we didn't have to send the machine back again.
Yes,
because that's what I was worried about. So, and Weston called tech support, and they're like, "Oh, we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 days," and we're like, "Ugh."
You need a second laser.
Yeah, we really do. And there's a job that if we get, I'm getting a second laser. And we ordered material last week, and it should come in this week for a couple test parts. And then once the customer sees those test parts, if he still likes them, then I think we got the job. So, and I got to meet with him as well in person. So he had a very interesting story, which I won't go into here, but I enjoyed talking to him for about an hour, learning how he started his business. Short story is he came up with an idea for a product. He had another company in another state make it. He got a design. No, he wanted a design patent, but he got a utility patent with the company that was making it. And then that company liked it so much that they wanted to hire him on. And he said no. And then they made it anyways. And so that bridge ended up getting burned, and he moved all of his production back to Arkansas. And he's doing a different product line that we're working on. But he was just kind of telling me his company's history over the last few years. And it was very interesting in the legality and having other people make your stuff business. So, but anyways, that's kind of everything that I have had going on. What about you?
I just had something on my head, and I remember what it was. So a while ago, we talked about a customer you had that needed like large scale laser markings and how to do that.
That's the same guy I'm talking about.
Same guy? Okay.
Okay.
Is it for something large scale or like one of the large panels?
Yeah, it's going to be like a almost 9x5 panel, which
9 inch by 5 inch or 9 foot by 5 foot.
Not 9 foot, 9 inch by 5 inch. I mean, it's big for our laser because our laser can only go up to 12 inches by squared, and we have to use the largest lens. It won't fit under the 175. It has to be 300. Which
I had a thought.
Go ahead.
I had a thought on how you could do larger panels.
Okay.
For not an exorbitant amount of money. Mm-hmm. There is this stuff called Ceramark that will let you mark metals on a normal CO2 laser.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never tried it before, but theoretically, if you had a panel that was like, for example, my laser is a 24 by 40, and it wasn't that expensive. So if you needed to do panels that size, you could just use the Ceramark stuff, and it's not as good as a fiber marking, but it's fairly permanent.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It was just an idea I had for you.
Yeah, we've thought about using that stuff because you can get it for aluminum as well, because you can't laser mark aluminum. And so I've thought about trying it on aluminum, and if I like it on aluminum, and here's the problem with why we haven't got a second fiber laser, is because we want to get a big CO2 laser, um, and to kind of have both capabilities in our own shop, because it would do a lot better at the tumbler stuff, I believe, because the fiber laser can remove the Cerakote of tumblers, but a CO2 laser is better because CO2 is less prone to try to mark the metal underneath the Cerakote,
Yes.
or the powder coat. So, um, so we've been
Actually, you
looking
can
at,
get a CO2 laser to mark tumblers for, I don't know, $1,400.
yeah, yeah, but we want to get one that's a little bigger, more capable,
Yeah.
something kind of like what you got. And the school has one that I teach at. It's also an OM Tech. It's 100 watt, um, like 2 foot by 3 foot or 3 foot by 4 foot, something like that.
It's
Um,
probably about the same one as mine.
yeah,
Mine's 24 by 40,
yeah,
which
something
I
like
believe
that.
is probably 600 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters. I think it's probably how it's spec.
Yeah, so it's a nice one. And there it was. I mean, it was cheaper than ours, so than our fiber laser. Um, but one interesting thing on these plates, that I just thought of. So when we did them, he wasn't sure that the customer wasn't sure if he wanted to do a black mark or if he wanted to do a deep engrave.
Okay.
And so we sent him 2 sample pieces. And when we sent them, I thought he was going to for sure do the dark mark. Because when we did the deep etch, I'm going to be honest, it looked like crap. Like it did not look good. It looked horrible. And I was like, there is no way he's going for this. Like, we're just going to do the dark mark and that'll be that. A couple days goes by and he calls us up when he gets the plates and he goes, I think I'm going to go for the etch. And I was like, are you sure? Are you seeing the same part that I'm seeing? He's like, no, I think it looks really good. And he's like, I showed it to everyone in the shop and they all like the non-dark mark one better too. And I'm like, this guy's nuts. And so I finally go and meet him in person, and he brings those plates. And it turns out, and they're both stainless, so I'm not sure exactly what effect is going on here. But somehow, and we did it by complete fluke, the etch tarnished in such a way that it left like a bronze finished mixed with like a dark tan.
Interesting.
And you can tell where more heat was in there because it's like bronze flashes where because the laser scanning back and forth, and when it stays in one area it gets hotter in that area versus when it goes over and does a larger area and it's sweeping. And so that combination of going in and out of smaller and larger areas with whatever settings we had at the time, was causing it going from like a gold bronzish color to like a tarnished gray or something, and it actually looked really cool. Um, and
Is
I
it
have
just
no
temper
idea.
colors? Like if you're tempering a knife,
No,
it's not those colors?
mm-mm.
Huh.
No, it was like it was reminded me of like the Statue of Liberty, kind of how it like how that copper tarnishes.
Yeah. Well, if you're exposing, because stainless steel is a mix of a bunch of things and iron. And if you are exposing the iron atoms in there, those could still rust.
Yeah,
Because that's what like passivizing does, is it just eats away all of the iron that's on the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
So
I don't know. That's interesting.
yeah, no, it was super weird. I have no idea how it happened, and it's one of those things that we're gonna have to get some samples in, and we're gonna have to play around with because that's what he
So you can do it
wants.
again.
Yeah, so it's like we did this by complete accident with unknown scrapped stainless steel material. that I just had lying around the shop. Can I get a repeatable process to produce this? And can I use a lower power machine because now he wants a etch, not a mark. And my plan initially was to get a lower power machine just to mark this. But if he wants this etching, then I need to get another 80 watt or maybe even 100 watt and to do this, because I don't think a lower power machine is going to be able to do it with the larger lens.
Yeah. Or just take a really long time.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's going to get the same
coppery... Oh, the coloration. Yeah.
So.
Could you, like, not fake it, but do something similar with, by, like, Cerakoting in the letters or enameling in the letters?
Not make it look good and repeatable, and that'd be a lot more. I mean, this guy's wanting this for, like, single-digit dollar amounts. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
So there's no way I can get down that. Like, I'm already having to do so much to try to, because I want repeatable work. I'm doing a lot to try to fit it into something that I normally wouldn't be able to do. And the only way I can do that is because of the volume that he's wanting, and because there's a lot of different things I'm going to try to do to automate it to where I don't have to stand in front of it, and then it's printing. It's like a printer at that point, and so I can justify charging less for it.
Yeah. Though, be careful about taking, repeatable work that'll slowly drive you broke.
Well, we'll be making money. It's not like we'll be losing any money. It's just that it's like I can make, $5 an hour doing that, or I could make, $50 to $100 an hour doing other stuff on it. And the $5 an hour doesn't sound like much, but if it's 40 hours of worth of work a week, every week for a month, or for not for a month, for like a year, that adds up. Versus the $100 an hour is only in spits and fits, and so
it's that opportunity cost game.
Yeah, exactly. So would you rather have $5 an hour and get it for 80 hours a week? Let's just say you could get 80 hours out of that machine at $5 an hour, or $100 an hour, but you don't know how many hours a week you're going to get out of it. So
that is the business calculus.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a trade-off problem.
Yeah. And so I'd like to have my cake and eat it too. And so in an ideal world, I would automate the machine where I could have something that I could stick on it and let it run during off hours, and then take that fixturing robot machine off and then use it like normal during the day. So I could just come in over the night or a weekend to all of his stuff done, and then use the laser for other stuff during the week. Or have a second machine, which I'd like to do both.
Yeah. Let's see. I've been heavy into powder coating the last couple of days. That's what I've been working on. Trying to get these Kickstarter carabiners out. I did the first couple, and basically, so the first couple carabiners I did a small batch of like 5 or 10, and that one worked. And then I did another batch of 5 or 10, and that batch didn't work as well. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of had to go down a troubleshooting rabbit hole, and basically it just comes down to like scaling my process, and the process I had just didn't scale very well. One of the big issues, I was getting a powder buildup on my like little fixture that I used to hold the carabiners, which when I was doing onesie twosies, I basically just made new hooks every time I did one. So I never ran into that. But that started to become a grounding issue with when I, am in production mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that I can basically just take a propane torch to my little hanging hooks, and in 3 minutes I can clean those all off and then do another batch.
So how's that work? If heat's what cures it, how does taking a propane torch clean them off?
Propane's a lot more heat.
So you're just
So powder coat is just a plastic. And if you apply the right amount of heat to the plastic, it melts. If you apply too much heat to the plastic, it burns.
gotcha.
So you can just,
Gotcha.
at 1500 degrees or whatever a propane torch is, it just vaporizes off.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I guess I
I
hadn't thought
did
about it that way.
learn I did learn that if you use the propane torch to remove powder coat from a carabiner that you screwed up the powder coat job on, it changes the properties of the spring, and you have to scrap that carabiner. I I had a batch that I screwed up, and I was like, this is working really well on the hooks. I'm going to try it on the carabiners, and so I torched off like 10 carabiners, and unfortunately had to throw all those in the scrap bin. But
So how did it change it? To make it more springy, less springy? Did it make it like where it was where it was brittle?
it seems to have softened the spring, so less springy. It was
Okay.
easier to distort. I kneeled it, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that is unfortunately not an option. And if I screw up any more, I'll just have to sandblast them off.
Gotcha.
But I found a good technique for sandblasting a bunch of carabiners at the same time. I took a bucket. I have a 2-gallon bucket, and I cut a hole in the lid. And so when I'm sandblasting in prep for powder coating, I just dump a bunch of the carabiners into that bucket and just like stick the sandblaster gun in there and run it for a couple minutes, and that's
Yeah.
worked super well.
Nice.
You don't have to have it quite as even as you do with like Cerakote. Like
Mhm.
you just need some tooth, and that's worked well.
Are you doing all of one color at a time, or are you doing a run of one color and then switching and doing a different color in a batch? Or
Yeah, I'm just working through the colors. Sorry, my fixture will hold 24 carabiners,
Mhm.
and I think the most popular color was orange, and there's only 60 of them because I have so many colors.
Okay.
So even with the orange, that's only 3 batches that I have to do.
Oh wow. Oh yeah.
So it's not bad.
Wow.
I did buy a second powder coat gun because all the colors get a color coat and then a clear coat over the color coat, and it's been just driving me insane to constantly switch colors. It wastes a lot of powder every time you switch, and it takes a couple minutes. And for every batch, I was switching from color to clear to color to clear to color to clear.
So do you cure the color and then spray it down for clear, or do you spray it down with the color, spray it down with clear, and then cure it all together?
So, all right, this is my process. I hang the carabiners on my rack. I put the rack in the oven for 2 minutes, and that gets them to about 100 degrees, 120 degrees or so.
Mm-hmm.
I take them out of the oven. I spray them with the color coat.
Mm-hmm.
I put them back in the oven for another 2 minutes, which just starts to
Harden.
melt the powder. Like it starts to run and flow and cover. But it's not cured. So then I take them back out and I spray with the clear coat. Then they go back in the oven for an additional 14 minutes, and that's when they actually cure.
Okay, that makes a whole lot more sense about why you would absolutely despise having
Yes.
two separate guns. Or not having two separate guns.
Yes. Yeah, because you have to, in 2 minutes, you have to change the color over.
Yeah. That's just, no. Yeah, you have to have two guns. Yeah.
So it also eliminates the risk of accidentally contaminating my clear coat with a color.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're changing all the time, it would be really easy to get a little bit of color into your clear coat. And then which you probably wouldn't notice when you're spraying it on the same color. But then when you go to change colors, you might have a red on top of blue or something.
Yeah.
And it would look weird.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. That's good. So how's what's been your biggest takeaway? Because this is probably the most amount of product you've produced of the same product in a given time?
Oh yeah,
Is
by
that
an order of magnitude. Because
yeah,
before this was the pry bars that I did 70 of.
yeah. So have you learned a lot from going up in batch size?
It's yeah, things just don't scale like you would think. That's basically been the challenge of the carabiners is like, or all of my challenges have come down to I thought this would scale, the process didn't scale.
Yeah,
It happened for the machining, it happened for the powder coating. I'm sure it's going to happen on the shipping.
yeah. And see, that's probably a small example of something that I've heard, but I've never understood until I've started getting to the larger back size batches of stuff. Is thinking about things in 10x terms. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would it take to 10x your business? Um, and when I would always think about that question in the past, I would go, "Oh, I'm just going to do 10 times the same amount of stuff I'm doing right now." But no, you have. It's like when you do 10x, when you 10x your business, like all the small annoyances that you just deal with on a daily basis, you just can't have and still 10x your business. Like you have
Yes.
to go through and fix all the little things because the little things are the most important things as you start getting volume.
Or there's new problems that present themselves that you haven't had to worry about before. Like
Exactly.
before this, before the carabiners, I never had to worry about tool life. I was doing small batches in aluminum and tools would just last forever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in for the pry bars, just the way I had my feeds and speeds, they would just run until they broke. And so it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to change this tool now, and I would just restart the program and it'd be fine. But with the carabiners, the tool did not ever break. I don't think I broke a single end mill during normal operations, only when I was experimenting with stuff. But they
Mm-hmm.
would slowly degrade and they would get worse and worse and worse until it made finishing the parts a nightmare or impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so like managing that became a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is, just out of curiosity, what is, because you're using basically one tool for all of your carabiners, right?
Yep.
So what is your tool life on that tool? Like have you figured out how many carabiners you can do with it?
It was
Um,
about 4 pallets,
about 4 pallets.
which is about 80 carabiners.
Okay.
The I did not count pallets per tool. What I did is I looked at the parts coming off, and because it was a pretty gradual slope, and this is what bit me at the beginning. It did not go, good carabiner, good carabiner, good carabiner, bad carabiner. It went, okay, this onion skin's getting worse, this onion skin's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. Oh, now it's really hard to remove. And there was not a moment where it was like, now it is bad. It was a gradual decay. And so I would kind of keep an eye on the carabiners coming off to change them. I think my coolant had a lot to do with that because at the beginning I was having issues with my coolant ring getting clogged up, and eventually I got the filter on there, and so like that helped my tool life a lot.
That's good. So next question. Um, is the onion skin the only problem that you have with as the tool degrades, or is there any other area on your parts coming off that are problematic as that tool degrades?
It was really just the onion skin at the bottom was the only thing that was visibly different between them. The finishes on the walls were all perfectly fine, and it didn't matter anyway because it was getting sandblasted and then tumbled and then in some cases powder coated.
So could you not just have your tool go a little bit deeper to ensure that you never got onion skin and then it would last a lot longer?
So I tried that, and this is actually something that I figured out in some of my earlier testing, like before I even went to production, is if you as you push deeper down, the onion skin would kind of stretch around the tool because this was a feed mill. It didn't have sharp corners like a regular end mill.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you made a pocket underneath the carabiner, you would just push material into that pocket. If you made that pocket deeper, you would just push the material farther down and farther down and farther down and farther down. And eventually you'd end up with like you'd basically be deep drawing the material. And I think I had one carabiner where there was a solid like 16th of an inch of just material, like a knife blade pointing straight down.
Oh
Titanium's
my.
stretchy. So it
That's
stretched
wild.
down aggressively. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, fair enough. Huh.
Now
I
I
guess I
did
would.
do tests. I did tests with a regular end mill, and the regular end mills do not have any of that same problem as the feed mills. But my tool life was really bad. Um, each
Have you
tool was making it through a pallet and no more.
have you thought about a hybrid system by chance?
Um, where I would start with a high feed mill and then go to a regular one. Yes, I tried that, and I probably could have pursued this more than I did. I tried it once, and the regular end mill immediately grabbed the carabiner because at this point it's mostly air and not so much a lot of material. It immediately grabbed the carabiner and pulled it out of the fixture.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know. It's one of those things where like it went wrong once and it scared me, and I didn't try it again. Uh, it probably could have worked. The other thing that I could have done that somebody suggested when I was like basically done with the whole process is have two identical feed mills in my machine and rough with one and then come back and finish with the other one. And that probably would have saved me a lot of tools.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's another good idea.
yeah, but
So,
I was too late to that party. At that point, when someone told me that, and I was like, "Oh, you're a genius!" I had like 2 pallets left, and it was, you're 1,000 carabiners too late, buddy. But that's a really good idea.
well, bookmark that for the next time.
Yeah, exactly. And I
So
plan on still making these. I wanted to have more inventory left than I do, but because of all these issues, like I scrapped a lot of carabiners throughout this process, like a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. That's usually how it goes. Um, like I find that the more stuff I make, the pickier I get, the
Yeah,
easier it is to scrap things. For stuff that I would, in the past would go, it's fine. Like now I'm like, no, it's not. So, but
yeah,
that's just the evolution as you the more you do, the more you start to recognize things that can be prevented versus things that um aren't that big of a deal. So, but
but I will have at least, I think, 150 or 200 carabiners that I can put up for sale on Etsy after this. So that's a
okay.
pretty big one, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Especially because is at least in terms of how I've done the math and how much money that we've made on these. I've always included that extra inventory into the profit margin on the Kickstarter.
Mhm.
Um, so really, there's, and this is again just for internal accounting purposes, but really, basically, after this, there's free inventory that I have that is
Yeah. Been
um,
paid for.
been paid for. Yeah, free money. Woohoo!
Yeah. So every one of those that gets sold, it's just free money at that point. You've already expensed it out. Um, Speaking of inventory, how do you determine the levels that you keep your inventories at for all your different stuff?
Um, for a lot of it, I just kind of, I know how many that I sell in a month or two or however long I want to go without, making the parts. Um, Most of my products are not expensive. The carabiners are probably the worst in terms of raw materials, and they're like $4 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, I guess the trays would be the worst. But so I just make a month or two at a time of them, and it's not a big deal to keep extras. With things like the carabiners, where I have a bunch of colors of them, I always keep the unfinished version around. So like I always have in general, if I have a powder coated version of a product, I also have a stonewashed version of it. And I would just make everything stonewashed and then powder coat to order.
That
That way I
makes
don't have to
sense.
inventory, 12 different colors of carabiners.
Yeah, which is the problem with anodizing.
Yep.
Because if you want to sell anodized stuff, you can't have a whole bunch of unfinished ones laying around.
Unless
Because
you
they
do it
get
yourself.
yeah, unless you do it yourself. Which We did have someone the other day who wanted raw aluminum. Um, it wasn't a playing card case; it was the little dice defender cases
Hmm.
on on Etsy. Although it is interesting, and I don't know how much of this you get, but we've started having a lot of people reaching out to us for custom stuff that we don't actually offer on our store through Etsy. Do you have
Yeah, I
people?
definitely saw that. I've definitely seen that. I haven't got anything lately, but I've seen it before.
Yeah.
Or like weirdo trays, like very custom trays. Back when I was selling a lot of trays,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people wanted really big trays, like
Mm-hmm.
bigger than my Tormaken machine.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Yeah. We've had some people ask for some interesting things, and we've told most people that we can do that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think we've only done a handful of things that actually come out and actually they wanted, but um, we've had a lot of people that have requested stuff, which I appreciate. Um,
yeah. The key I found with those is start with the price.
yeah.
Is the
Hmm.
they'll say I want a custom tray that's 24 inches by 12 inches, and you'll go, okay, that's going to be at least like $600 just in aluminum, and they're going to go, okay, thank you very much, goodbye.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yep.
Pretty much. Yeah. I wish I could go back 5 years ago before everything got crazy and material like aluminum was dirt cheap compared to now, and just make all the things in aluminum.
And then sit
So
on all that inventory.
not sit on all that inventory, but just it's less painful for mistakes. So, it's like, oh, I just scrapped, 50 cents versus today it's like, oh, that was like $8 plus my time.
Yep.
Which, I
Yep.
mean, I say $8. It's $8 versus 50 cents. It's not like a huge deal, but it just eats you up inside slowly. Especially if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, which I do less of, but it does happen every once in a while where you go through like 3 hours and you've scrapped all the parts in 3 hours, can't figure out what's going on. So, like, I had one part that I was making for a guy, and it was out of a 8-inch square block of aluminum that was an inch and a half thick. Um,
Hmm.
and I bought one extra, and I ended up needing it because I broke a tap off,
Oh,
and it
have
was
some
on the
patience.
and it was the last operation.
Yep.
And it comes back to us. It's my own dumb fault, but at the same time, it's so funny story on that one. There was when we first got our machine, we did the Titans of CNC class. And so our
Uh-huh.
first 16 tools are Titan of CNC tools. And so in the drills and taps section of our tool list, it'll be like 910 drill tap, 11 12 drill tap, 13 14 drill tap. And they're kind of paired together.
Yep.
And um, so it's like when I remove one drill and remove one tap, I just go up the next level and I do the same thing. Well, when I did that on this one, the right drill was already in there, and I decreased its size because I moved down two drills. Like I moved down both parts at the same time, but I was on the wrong side of the pairing,
Oh, yeah.
and um, and so it was just one of those things where it's like we had been drilling with that drill and tapping, but when I flipped it, I went the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I was so mad, so mad. I drilled a hole that was too small for my tap and just destroyed my tap. So
Yep. That's always the worst.
yeah, I was so mad. And it was the last operation, and yeah, and then on the last two parts that I did, it had a bottom edge that was thicker than the top edge, and in that bottom edge there was a piped hole that needed to get MPT hole
Mm-hmm.
that was tapped, and it was on a taper. And that was actually my first thread milling, was a tapered hole. And I did the first one correct. The second one, I was running that machine while running the lathe. So I was running two machines, and then I was helping out someone else in between that was not paying attention. And I loaded the part 180 degrees wrong and
Mm-hmm.
tapped the hole in the thin portion of the metal instead of the
Yeah.
thick. Thankfully, the customer was like, "We'll try it, and I'll let you know if there's any problems." And I was like, "Okay," because I don't got any more material.
Yeah.
So, um, I was so mad about that one too. But it ended up working and it ended up being plenty strong. He didn't need the extra material because I also designed the parts for him. So I put that extra material in there because the parts that he was wanting me to mimic had it. And he was like, "I'm not sure if I need that extra material, but throw it in there." I'm like, "Okay." So I was lucky in that sense because I don't think it actually needed it, but it was still mad that I put it in the wrong end.
Threaded holes are the worst.
Yeah.
I find myself trying to avoid them more and more lately because the tape measures, I just didn't have any room for threaded fasteners, which
Mm-hmm.
is why I went with the dowel system. And I think I'm going to have to redesign that to use threaded fasteners, unfortunately.
What? Why? It's just not holding together.
It's holding together, but when you assemble them, there's no way to like cinch the seams closed.
Oh.
Um, and it also takes longer to assemble. And then also there's no repairability. Like if that thing breaks, or something simple happens, let's say you somehow suck up a rock into your tape measure, there is
Mm-hmm.
no way to take that thing apart without destroying the tape measure inside. Now, if you wanted to take it apart, you could take it apart with some heat, but it would melt the tape, and you just have to replace the tape that's on the inside. So, like every time you open it, it costs you $6 for a new tape measure. I don't know. I guess it's not the end of the world, but I want repairability to be a part of my products.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I'm working on a like a razor knife now, like kind of like a box opener.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just don't have room for threaded fasteners. I was able to get one in there, but I don't have room for a second one.
So you're trying to figure out how to join everything together with one screw.
Yes. Which it in a perfect world, if the parts were perfectly flat, it wouldn't be a problem. But
How so?
keeping what?
How so?
Oh,
You think one screw could keep everything together?
in a perfect world where you have spherical cows and perfectly rigid parts
Oh,
and
okay.
nothing's rubber, yeah, it'll be perfect. But
That's, I guess, if nothing's rubber, that's the big key there.
um, yeah, the problem is everything's rubber and nothing is flat, and
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think that one screw is going to do it. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure where else to go. I mean, we could put in a actually, I don't even know if there's room for like an A80 screw.
Mm.
There might be. Uh, I need to look at it again. I just haven't had time to finish that design. It
Yeah.
could be that we could do with some teeny tiny screws, but I
Um.
may need to find an alternate method.
Here's an idea. Could you dovetail the two halves together where they slide together, and then the screw just keeps them from sliding from each other?
That's possible. I thought about putting a dovetail type fixture on the end of the knife, and then
Mm-hmm.
like you pivot it down, kind of like a battery cover, and
Mm-hmm.
just hold it down with that one screw. But actually, you might be able to just dovetail everything together. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So that
Um,
you could dovetail the two halves together, and then the one screw is acting in shear instead of in. So it doesn't matter if it
tension,
loosens
yeah.
any or anything like that.
I don't know. I might play with that design.
Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah, I I'm so out of time on like 4 different things that I need to do. Um, mostly machining time, or excuse me, design time right now is what I am lacking time on. So I have like this knife that I need to get out before the end of the month, which I just don't know if that's going to be possible right now. And then, what was the other thing? Oh, I need to finish the design for the design revisions to the tape measure, because ideally I would like to launch that tape measure on January 1st. But that would mean I need to finish the design. Harrison here needs to machine it, laser engrave it, and then I need to send it off to my product photography guy, who then sends me the pictures so that I can get the Kickstarter campaign made. All before January 1st. And
yeah,
I mean, technically it might be possible right now, but
yeah,
I might be paying my machinist some expediting fees and my photographer some expediting fees. And
yeah. And I'm leaving out on Wednesday through Friday for my brother's graduation in a different state. So
of this week?
yeah.
Oh, that's fine, because I'm not going to have it done before then. I'm hoping to have the carabiner shipped. Oh, it might be really optimistic, but before the end of this week. And then I have some brain space and time space open to start working on these other projects.
Yeah. I'm thinking that we're going to get the second batch of tape measures started maybe tomorrow.
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot I ordered those. Would you? Can I pay you to do the design revisions to the tape measures?
Yeah.
Do you have the bandwidth for that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'll send you a PO. I just need them to be. I need them to be quick and easy to put together, and to, look a little better.
Okay.
Get that seam a little bit smaller.
Okay.
Cool. Because there's no way I'm going to get it done otherwise.
Yeah, I understand. I've been there.
and then I'll work on the generative art side on my end.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Make 100's coming up fast.
Yep, January. Technically, I can launch any day in January.
Yeah.
However, you get the majority of the people who are on Kickstarter looking for the Make 100 things, they are there on January 1st. So if you're going to do a Make 100, to get the advantage of it being a Make 100, you have to launch on January 1st.
Now, do you have enough information to go ahead and do everything, or do you need because you've already got a batch of 25.
Yes.
So machining wise, you should be good there for that, even if you make revisions, right? Or no? Or does it just depends on the type of revisions?
So these 25 and the next 25, I'm going to sell on Etsy basically as a different product than these. The Kickstarter ones will be a different revision. They'll look different because they'll have they'll probably have some sort of threaded fastener in there, et cetera, and they'll have the engraving. So the Kickstarter ones will be unique from the regular ones.
Gotcha. Okay. With that in mind, I'll have to get started on that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. Did you read The Critical Chain by the Gold Dude? It's the book club book for that other podcast with Intolerance.
No, I haven't. Okay. I haven't.
It was really good and made me realize how bad I am at managing projects.
Well,
again, this is something I thought I was good at until I had to do it all on my own.
Yeah. I'm in a bit of project stasis right now because we're stepping outside of our normal wheelhouse and doing some bent sheet metal, and so I'm machining the dies for it because they're custom dies to make this part, and it's really annoying because it was we're making a replica of a part that was made in the 40s,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. And because it's a replica, and because in the 40s they didn't have CNC machines that made everything perfect, so their dies were probably hand cut or machined.
Yep. Probably done on a scraper
Yeah.
or a
So
shaper. Sorry, a shaper.
so they want the imperfections from the old process in the replica. So I have to find a way to measure imperfect angles and corners and variable radiuses and random flats where so it's a part that's circular, but it's like ovaled and not quite a perfect circle. And
Yeah.
the first set of dies that I made were perfect circles, and they look great for what they are. But the customer's like, that's too perfect. Like they need to be defective to be a true replica, and it's like this is making it infinitely harder.
Yeah. So it's
I
not just
can't.
like on the surface finish of the bend, it's like the actual shape.
Yes,
Interesting. Can you just like bring a hammer to it? Like throw it in a
I
forge, rack it with a
remachined
hammer a
the
couple times?
I remachined the same dies that I already had made. So thankfully, I didn't have to remake them from scratch. But I still haven't pressed any parts in them yet because I do need to get some new parts from Sencut Send. But I didn't want to order 4 parts for $30, and so I was waiting for a larger order to come in, and I think it just came in. So for
That's good.
these little
Oh yeah, the orange
um,
slices. Yeah.
so I think I'm going to be piggybacking off that order.
Yeah. I remember telling you that I wasn't out of the orange slices, but I was going through my inventory today and I was like, oh, I just sent off my last brass one. I have 2 copper ones left. I have maybe 5 stainlesses and 3
Oh
or 4
my,
titaniums. It's like, oh, I'm actually kind of low on those.
yeah.
I think the
I'll
Christmas rush has made my mental math not check out because I've been selling them faster.
How do you keep your inventory? Do you just keep them in a box in the corner, or do you actually have like an organized method for keeping up with it?
I have a while ago. I made a whole bunch of boxes. They're plywood, just plywood boxes. They are designed so that they're 8.5 by 11 on the inside, just so they fit a piece of paper. Um, and I just have kind of a whole array of those, and the different products get their own different boxes.
Okay,
I'll probably go to a Gridfinity system in the future because everything's Gridfinity right now. But I've used those boxes for years.
gotcha. Um, and then when you have them on Etsy, do you just put your maximum amount, and when they run out, they run out? And is that how you keep up with your inventory?
Yep. Um, if I have a something that I have a large number of, a lot of the time I'll do like my actual inventory -1, just in case if I miscount, I don't oversell them. But yeah, when Etsy runs out, then I'm generally actually out of them.
Gotcha. And do you does Etsy? And I don't know this because I honestly don't mess with the inventory side as much as my cousin does. But does Etsy give you like a low inventory warnings, or can you set up low inventory warnings on Etsy?
I don't think so. It'll tell you when you're out. I don't know if it does a like, hey, you're gonna run out soon warning.
That'd be a really
I don't
good
know.
feature for Etsy.
It would be. I just keep an eye on it. The bigger problem, and this is what Etsy really needs to fix, is I have some products that I sell in sets or as individuals. So, for example, my meeples, I just got those on Etsy, and they are in both a 4-pack and a 10-pack. But there's no way to tell Etsy like, hey, I have 20 meeples right now. Sell them either as 4-packs or as 10-packs.
Yeah,
So, like right now, I have 2 10-packs listed and 5 4-packs. And if I sell, you know, I could theoretically sell twice as many meeples as I have.
yeah, yeah, and that's I had a similar problem with Etsy with a product we were making where it was a box with a lid, but it wasn't the deck defenders. It was something else. Excuse me. And you could get it in two different colors, and for the box or the lid. And if I was trying to fill out on Etsy that I had two different colors, and I wanted you to select color A and color B, it would show you every possible combination that you had to have an inventory for it. And it's like, no, I just want to have an inventory for
Yep.
colors A and colors B, and then they can mix and match them however. And as long as I have column A has one separate inventory, column B has separate inventory. But it wouldn't work. The only way you could really do it is if you had them as two different listings, and that would, I'm sure, confuse everyone.
Yeah, though there is something to be said for having duplicate listings on Etsy, because the more listings you have, the more chances of getting eyeballs.
Yeah, but then you also have the issue of you have to keep the inventories on multiple listings for
Yes.
one item.
Yes, that is also a problem, and something I have faced before. Because I'll have so for example, my key rings, those are a good add-on item for things like my orange slice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to keep inventories across the orange slices to the
Mm-hmm.
which I do have the key rings now on Etsy, which before when I was just buying them from China and reselling, they used to actually be a really good seller. And I'm hoping that'll maintain it now that I have, ones that I'm making, ones that Sencut Send is making for me.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, you do really well with your little items that you're getting from Sencut Send. We were just talking about that today, me and my cousin, about how we really need to get good at tumbling things because
yes,
because you can do a lot with sheet metal if you cut it in different things.
Yep. For the copper orange slices, in the past, I have had my soft jaws for them weren't so great, and for the copper ones, I just stopped machining them altogether, and I just tumbled them for 3 days, and it just rounded over the edges because copper's really soft.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't look quite as good as having a nice real chamfer on there, but I mean, it worked.
Do you, whenever you get any of your laser cut parts, I know you tumble them a lot, but do you have a belt sander where you touch the edges if you have flat edges? Does that make?
I don't do the edges, but I do the tabs. So all laser cut parts have either a lead in, lead out mark, or if it's smaller than the point grid on the laser, they have a tab. And basically everything I make is small enough that it has a tab. So I clean those off with the belt grinder.
Gotcha. Okay. That's fair. I wish there was a way to tell them where you wanted the tab on Sencut
you can
Send.
leave them a note. You can. Yes, they have their automated process, but there's still people making the parts. And so you leave a note. One thing that I've learned to do is ask for your parts to be thrown in a bag and not using their shrink wrap packaging, because their shrink wrap packaging, when you have 80 orange slices, which are basically just the size of a large coin, it takes so long to cut those out of the packaging, but they'll just throw them in a bag for you.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I'll have to think. I'll have to do that.
Yeah, it'll save you a lot of time later on.
Because there's not only for the orange slices, but there's another item we're looking to have done at Sencut Send, and it's a smaller item, and cutting hundreds of those out would suck.
Yep.
So,
as for bags, I mean, think about the carabiners. What if they had tried to shrink wrap all of those carabiners? It would have taken me 2 days to get them all cut out of their shrink wrap.
Although it is a really cool shrink wrapping process. I do like that.
It is. It's cool. And if your parts need the protection, it's great. If you have formed parts, if you have larger parts that need to stay flat, if you have aesthetic finishes, but I do none of those things from Senkat Sen. So
yeah. It
use
is
code
funny
design
though.
everything for 15% off at checkout.
Yeah. I need to use that code too. I'm trying to use that code.
Yes,
So
I think it still works. I tried to use it myself, and I think it doesn't let me use it because they know that I'm me. But I think it works for other people still.
I'll have
I
to
had to use
try it. I'll
Tyler
let you know.
Bell's discount code on the last thing I did because I couldn't use my own.
That's hilarious. So, let's see here. Was there anything else? Done a lot of Cerakoting on guns here recently.
Nice.
That's been going well. And it's funny because there is a technique for everything out there.
Yes.
And the front dovetail sight on some of these guns is a pain in the butt to do, to get it on and off, because you have to hammer it in, and you really need to use something that's brass so you don't damage it.
Yep.
And then your brass parts that you're using to hammer it in get damaged and then
They
bend
slowly
over and
mushroom,
don't work. So it's just really frustrating. And I ended up using the first time I used a non-brass punch to try to hammer it on and damaged my Cerakote, so we had to strip it and redo it.
Yeah.
But it's some of those stuff. It's we're learning as time goes on how to get better and better finishes and how to assemble and disassemble stuff a lot faster. Like I'm getting to the point where I can strip a pistol and reassemble it in 5-10 minutes pretty easily. Although there are still a few guns out there that have very annoying springs that are a pain to get back in the right spot. A lot of these guns are really well. I really like Glock, except for their so here Glock and Smith and Wesson. I've done a decent amount of both of those at this point. Glock, everything about it is amazing except for the mag release. The mag release is a plastic part that has a metal bar that's going up, and then you have to bend it over and pop it into a small hole, and then it'll act as the spring to push it in and out.
Yeah.
And so you have to sit there with like a screwdriver or something reaching down into the mag well, trying to pop it in, and it's a pain. Versus the Smith & Wesson, they have theirs where you can take a little screwdriver on the side, and it's got just a little flathead screwdriver that you can push in, twist it, and it's all self-contained in the mag release, and you can pop it out of the way. And what's cool is because you can make it ambidextrous. You can flip that whole assembly around, stick it in from the other side. You go from a left hand versus right hand. Takes you 2 seconds. It's awesome. On the flip side, Glock, their trigger assembly, all of their springs are contained in a way that you can disassemble it without any springs going anywhere. And whenever you go to put in the pins, you don't have to line up any springs. It's all self-contained. It's awesome. On the Smith & Wesson, the springs are typically tension springs that have 2 loops, and you have to reach in there with a tool to pull one of those loops in over the pin that you're trying to push in. So you need 4 arms to try to hold everything in place while you're trying to push the pin through. And so they both have like things that I really like about them, and they both have things that I just despise with a passion. So it's fun to kind of, as you work with more guns, figure out what you like, what you don't like, what brands do well with some things and what brands do well with others. I totally understand. Like I've always enjoyed working on stuff, and I've always enjoyed guns, but I've never really worked on guns until now, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
So,
Well, I think we should probably cough some at the microphone. I think we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Thanks for everyone who's stayed listening to us rambling on. Please subscribe and tell all your friends about our podcast. We really appreciate it. And those of you that have been listening and have been sending us messages, I just want to let you know that I appreciate that, and I'm sure AJ does as well. But all the messages of people listening to our podcast, like, I don't know if this happened to you, slightly off topic as I'm kind of closing up here, but like, I'll randomly get like Instagram messages where someone will be replying as though they're listening to the conversation we're having. And it's like they're replying to something that I said, several days ago or a week ago, and then I just have to like rewind in my mind and go, "Oh yeah, we're talking about this." Like, yep, okay, now I know where we're at. But like every once in a while, it's like, okay, what was I talking about? Like, what is this person sending me? I am so confused.
I have definitely had to re-listen to our episodes so that like I have the context when talking to somebody.
Yeah. Because, for them, it's fresh in their mind. But for me, it's like, I had this conversation a while ago. Like, I need to rewind and remember what I said. But it's a ton of fun. And I really, it makes me feel good whenever people reply back and I go, they're actually listening and responding to something I said in the podcast. So those of you that have been listening and sending me stuff, I greatly appreciate it. So anyways, this is me, Harrison, with Precision Ingenuity, signing out here with AJ from Design the Everything.
Bye.
Bye.